Hey folks, welcome to my first virtual track guide, this one at my home track of Badger Kart Club in Dousman, Wisconsin. I was able to get in a go-kart the other day and turn a few laps while I was doing some coaching with another driver. We needed to get a data set to compare his laps to, so I was able to jump in and turn a few laps, and I figured it would be a great time to record some video, walk you through pretty much every corner on this track, and try to help you if you're looking to pick up a few tenths at Badger. This is my home track. I've been racing here for over 20 years, so I've got more laps than you could possibly imagine. I kind of know my way around this track like the back of my hand, so I thought it would be a good one to start off this series with and kind of walk you through each corner step by step. We're going to break down entry, apex, and exit for every corner. Then we will kind of discuss a few things at the end. So let's dive right in here at the first corner, which is a 90-degree left-hander just after the start-finish line. You're coming in here with a lot of speed. It's a very fast corner. Your entry point, the key thing here is you're going to want to get the cart rotated quickly. So it's going to be a quick initial input of the wheel, and then you're going to want to straighten that wheel out and kind of let the cart float off the corner. You're kind of aiming for just below that edge of the concrete strip here, so your outside tires are just a little bit in from that concrete strip on the outside of that. And then you can use a little bit of curb if you want to at the apex, but you don't have to. The key here, though, is getting the cart rotated quickly and getting back to the throttle as soon as possible. You can see here at the apex I've got a tiny bit of counter steer in. Usually you just want to have the wheel straight through here, but on a practice day like this, the grip level isn't as high as it's going to be on a race day, so there's a little bit more margin for some counter steering, a little bit more sliding. But you can see here I'm basically at the apex. I don't have my inside tires on that curb. I have them just on that white line. You can use a little bit of this curb if you want to. It's not really going to hurt you. The key thing, though, like I said, is you want to get the cart rotated here and then kind of float it off the corner from the apex off. You want to get to the throttle as soon as possible because this is a very fast corner, and this is going to lead us down into the sweeper, which is going to be our first braking zone and our first overtaking opportunity on the track, really. So any speed you carry here is going to help you to defend or get a run into the next corner. So depending on what class you're going to be in, your braking zone is going to be in between these two kinks here as we head down into the sweeper. For KA and something similar in speed like X30 or something like that, my reference point is kind of this crack that goes along the beginning of the concrete patch here. And that's kind of where I'm aiming to reach max brake pressure. So I'm starting to apply the brakes right about here. By the time I get the pedal down, I'm going to be about at that crack, and that's kind of my braking point. This can be a tough one because the corner is, the entry of this is curved, so the cart has a tendency to want to kick out on the rear and dance a little bit as you come into this corner. So it's really important to master where you're getting on the brakes and master getting to that maximum brake pressure and not going over it too far and losing control of the cart as you go into this braking zone. And the other thing that is important for this corner is that you want to get the cart through here on one smooth arc all the way to the apex of this corner. So you're going to be progressively feeding wheel into it. Because this entry is curved, you're going to want to be continuing to put wheel into the cart as you slide up the track here a little bit to set up for the entry of this corner, and then swoop down to the apex on the curb on the inside there. You can see on the entry there the rear was dancing around a little bit, and I had to correct a couple times to get it to stay in line there. But once we get to the apex here, I'm also using all the curb here. You can definitely use all this curb. It's not going to upset the cart too much. You just want to make sure that you're modulating the throttle and bracing on the steering wheel so that when you do hit this curb, it's not going to let the cart get upset and kick you up the track as you come through this corner. And then on the exit, you have to be aware that we're going to be coming all the way back across the track to the left to set up for the hairpin, which is a right-hander. So you kind of want to stay off that curbing on the outside and not use that runoff because we do need to make it back to the other side of the track to set up for the next corner. So as we move over to the left side of the track, we're aiming for that concrete strip again. We want to get our outside tires to about 6 inches below the outside edge of that concrete strip that we're going to see here as we go into the hairpin. And the goal is to make this all one smooth U-shaped arc through the hairpin so that we roll a lot of speed through this corner, and then we roll off the corner smoothly. At the apex here, you can see I'm really high up on this curb. I'm almost in the grass with my inside tires. I like to use all the curb here. This is going to keep the outside tires in the rubber and the grippiest part of the track, and it's going to help the cart grip, rotate, work through this corner. It can be kind of important to modulate the throttle through here. You don't need to be immediately on the gas, but you want to start feeding throttle in progressively as you roll through this corner. It's a slow corner, so you don't want to upset the cart by jumping on the throttle too hard. So feed a little bit of throttle in, and then as soon as you start to feel the tires responding to that throttle positively, you can start to roll full throttle through this corner and drive off the exit. Again, we've got to get back to the right side of the track to set up for the left-hander here, the top of the boot. And once again, we're kind of aiming for just below the outside edge of this concrete strip to get our outside tires on. That's going to keep us in the grippiest part of the track, driving in the rubber for this corner. And then this one's going to be a little bit more of a late apex, and you'll see that once we pause it and look at the actual apex of the corner. But this one ends up actually being a little bit of a late apex because the corner kind of has a dip in the middle. And where you have to hit the curb to get through here smoothly kind of means that you need to make this a little bit later. Again, using a lot of curb here. You can see my inside tires are basically in the grass, hovering above that grass as I jump over this curb a little bit. Just trying to make this as short as possible through this corner, and then keeping those outside tires in the rubber. Again, a little bit of a later apex. What we want to do is we want to get really set up straight as we come off this corner. The outside of this corner has some runoff, but there's a dip in that runoff, so you don't want to use the runoff here because it's going to upset the cart if you use it and then hit that dip as you're trying to turn to set up for the boot. So you want to apex this a little bit later so that we're not riding up on that curbing on the outside off the corner. Now we come up to one of the most technical parts of the track, which is the boot. And the key here is getting into the corner with a wide enough angle that you're getting through the toe of the boot with some speed and able to roll off there and carry that speed down into the next corner. So to do that, we've got to really use this curb on the left side here that we're coming up on. You can see I'm pointed right straight at it. And when we pause it at the apex, you're going to see I've got the cart centered basically over this curb. That's going to give us a wider angle of attack on the toe of the boot so that we can widen that angle, roll more speed through the apex and the toe of the boot, carry that off the corner, and then carry it all the way down into the next section of corners. You can see I've got my left inside tires here just hovering over the grass basically. You don't want to use too much of the curb here because you do risk bouncing off the back side of this curb if you use too much. But you can pretty much center your go-kart over this curb, and that's going to give you that wider angle of attack into the toe of the boot, which is going to help you carry speed down into the next section. So we've set up really well for this corner here. We've gotten down to the apex of the boot. You can use a little bit of the curb here if you want. It can be kind of tough to actually use a lot of this curb just because your entry is so compromised from having to turn left and then right. But I like to use a little bit of curb here, and the goal is to get on the throttle just at the apex here while we're on the curb or just before the apex. We want to be carrying maximum speed through this corner into the next section. So the sooner you can get on the throttle without compromising your exit, the better. So since we're running the national circuit, which includes the extension onto this track that was recently added within the last couple of years, the next corner, instead of being a hairpin like we usually see on the classic circuit, is now a 90-degree left-hander, kind of similar to turn 1. This is one of the more difficult corners on this track with this layout just because the corner is really hard to spot the apex and the curbing is really hard to spot. So the turn-in point can be really difficult to figure out where you need to turn in. But I try to approach this exactly the same as I approach turn 1. So you're putting in an initial input that's pretty firm and pretty quick, and we're just going to kind of try to float this thing through the corner. There's no real reference points to find here, so this is going to take a lot of practice to figure out where you need to turn in. But the key here, again, just like in turn 1, is getting the kart rotated before the apex, straightening out, getting over the curb on the inside, because that's going to help you keep the kart in the rubber and keep it in the grippiest part of the track, and just kind of let the kart float off the corner. You want to get back to throttle as soon as possible here. You can see we turned in fairly early here as well. And we're kind of aiming for just the end of that curb, the front end of that inside curb, and we want to use all the curb we can here. You can even, float 2 tires on the inside over the grass here if you want to. It's going to be a little bit rough going over this curb, but it's kind of necessary to keep the kart in the grippiest part of the track. Again, this is kind of a tough corner just because there's no reference points on the entry, and the apex is kind of blind. So you kind of just have to chuck it in, hope you hit the apex right, but the main thing is that you're getting to the throttle as soon as possible through here so that we can carry the speed off the corner into the next series of corners. Moving into the new section of the track now, it gets kind of tricky because we're working with multiple different types of pavement. So as we come through this corner, we're looking for our braking zone right about the end of these curbs. And then quickly the track transitions from normal pavement to a really, really grippy rhino lining type of material, which can really change the dynamics of the kart as we go through here. But you want to be braking right about at the end of these curbs here on the outside that you see. And you really want to attack the entry to this corner because, like I said, it becomes very grippy here once we get on the black stuff here. It's like tar. So you can drive this kart in really deep here and get really hard on the brakes and get it rotated pretty quickly as we get to the apex. You can see we get pretty close to the inside curb here. You can use a little bit of curb. You don't necessarily need to. The more important thing through here is keeping really strong and firm on the wheel and not letting the kart bounce around too much here. Because this is so grippy, any extra movement you make on the wheel or any time you let the kart drive you rather than you drive the kart, it's going to result in the kart bouncing a lot through here because there's just so much grip. So you've got to make sure that you drive into this corner hard, you get the wheel turned, and then you stay strong and you just hold the kart stable all the way through this corner. Using most of the track on the exit, but do keep in mind that we need to come back to the left to set up for the right-hander that's going to lead us onto the main straightaway again. Again, we've got another right-hander hairpin leading us onto the straightaway again as the final main corner of this track. And it's kind of a tough one again because the track surface changes halfway through the corner. So what we want to do is we want to set up wide here, get the kart starting to rotate through here, and what we're aiming for is just kind of a middle apex of this corner. And then we want to drive the kart smoothly out of the corner. You want to get on the throttle as soon as possible here, make this corner as smooth as possible on the throttle and the steering wheel. Because any speed that you carry here is going to help you all the way down the straightaway. Any speed that you scrub off here is going to hurt you all the way down the straightaway. So this ends up being a pretty important corner to master. I like to apex right about here, so that's kind of a medium apex. The curbing has kind of a shape to it where it sticks out a little bit more right here where we're apexing, kind of at the middle of the corner. And then our goal is to just roll smoothly off the exit of this corner. We want to be as smooth as possible, so we're carrying as much speed as possible all the way down the front straightaway. And that's a hot lap around Badger Kart Club in Dousman, Wisconsin. The main keys of this track is really mastering your rhythm. The infield's very technical, so you have to figure out how to master, the left and the right, the left and the right. And the track is an old school track. It's rough. It's not the smoothest track in the world. There's not the most grip in the world, so it takes a little bit of muscle to get around some of these corners. And you've got to figure out where those bumps and those undulations in the track surface are and drive around them accordingly so that you're getting the kart to work all the way through every single corner. And the other thing to remember too is now with this new section extension, onto the end of the track here, there's a bunch of different pavement types. Even in the old section, there's concrete and asphalt. So there's different surface types you've got to contend with, and you've got to figure out the grip levels and all those things. And it's all just about mastering modulation from steering and throttle and braking to balance the kart all the way through all these different types of corners. I always heard growing up as I was racing here as a junior and a cadet that if you could race well at Badger, you could race well at most tracks. And I think that's because this track serves up a lot of different types of corners. You've got turn one, which is a really fast 90-degree corner. And then in the new section, you've got that long left-hander. You've got the transition corner, which is really fast. But at the same time, it's also giving you a lot of hairpins. And it's giving you these concrete patches and everything that are, a little bit more old school. So the track isn't perfect, and because of that, you've kind of got to be adaptable and learn how to roll with the punches here a little bit. But I do think if you figure this track out, you're well on your way to figuring out a lot of other tracks, and hopefully it's making you a more adaptable and well-rounded driver. So I think this is a pretty good track for learning.